The Black Panther Party by Thomas Anderson. The founders of the Black Panther Party were Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale. Huey Newton was born in Louisiana in 1942 and moved to Oakland at the age of 3 in 1945, while Bobby Seale was born in Texas in 1936 and moved to Oakland in 1946. The way that Seale and Newton met was at Merritt College in Oakland, California. There was a African American association there, and along with some others, that group helped to create the first black black studies classes. And while attending the school, they had a chance to interact with one another, and they were both influenced by people like Malcolm X, Che Guevara, Karl Marx, Vladimir Lenin, and Mao Zedong, who all were very known revolutionaries and whose works helped to inspire the Black Panthers. So one of the many beliefs of the Black Panthers was, well, the original belief of the Black Panthers was with the monitoring of the Oakland Police Department. They would go on ride-alongs, essentially, not with the police, but following the police around, making sure that they're not harassing any of the citizens of Oakland, and just making sure they were doing their job. That was originally what they started doing, but about a year later, by 1968 or 69, they started making more efforts to help the community by doing things like opening free breakfast programs for children before school, health clinics for education and treatment of diseases. They opposed the military draft as well as segregation. And another thing they did was they also helped with self-defense classes when it came to either martial arts or the art of, well, not the art, but just self-defense is related to the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms. So the Black Panther Party's 10-point program, this was a set of guidelines and ideals that the party ran by, and essentially all of these uh, essentially were all related to one another. And what they considered it was a combination between the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and the Bill of Rights in the Constitution. So what they wanted was freedom in the first one. They wanted employment, jobs. They wanted the exploitation of black people to stop by the white establishment. They wanted decent housing. They wanted education. They wanted the war to stop, and they specifically wanted to exclude black men from being drafted into the war. Mind you, this is during Vietnam, and a lot of backlash for the war was going on, especially in the black community. They wanted to end police brutality, which is obviously still an issue. They wanted to free all black men and men that were in prison, because a lot of black men, this leads to number 9, were not given were not given fair trials, a jury by their peer, which the Constitution said they deserved, so they felt like they should be freed. And then they also said that they wanted um, essentially a black colony in the United States, which would allow for the building of a black community by themselves without having any type of oppression or establishment trying to stop them from achieving success. So some of the effects of this, obviously this didn't sit well with the non-black community and with the government, was that it essentially pissed off a lot of people like J. Edgar Hoover, who was head of the FBI, and he called the group the greatest threat to the internal security of the country. Along with this, he created a program called COINTELPRO, which stands for Counterintelligence Program, which monitored people like Martin Luther King, as well as other far left activists, considered far left activists, during this time between 1954 and 1956 and 1972 or 73 until it was exposed. And Martin Luther King was, some people think Martin Luther King was murdered as a result of the COINTEL program. Some people think that Medgar Evers was murdered. These are two civil rights activists. But also, people in the Panther Party were murdered as well because of this program, including Fred Hampton, who was leader of the Chicago chapter, who was murdered at the age of 21 during a raid from the Chicago police. And then other Panther members and those associated with the Panthers were also targeted, including Eldridge Cleaver, Bobby Seale, and Huey Newton. Huey Newton had a murder charge, but he was acquitted by a grand jury. A lot of Panthers and a lot of Panther individuals went down for murder charges, but were all acquitted due to lack of sufficient evidence. And Newton even had to go to exile and move to Cuba for a minute in order to avoid, I guess, the oppressive establishment that the police were doing, that the police were creating as a result of this COINTEL program. So because of this, numerous shootouts began occurring between police and the Panthers, and this obviously led to the death of several officers, but more Panthers. And due to the fact that the Panthers were essentially instilling, um, well, they were creating uh, plants, and they were putting plants into the community. Essentially, distrust and paranoia became very big within the Black Panther Party, and many people were tortured and were killed as a result of the paranoia and distrust that happened due to the idea, which was later proven true, that people were intentionally joining the party in order to expose what they were doing to the FBI and to the government. And as a result of all of this, the Panthers declined by the 1970s. It went under new leadership in the mid 70s, early to mid 70s, I think, with a woman who began to lead it. And by that time, though, it was declining because all the main Panther, the original Panther creators had either left or had been charged with murder. And by the 1980s, when Huey returned from Cuba, it completely disbanded when it was revealed that Huey Newton had used drug money, had used money from the organization to fund his drug habit. So the Panthers are viewed pretty interesting today. In today's society, the Panthers might be celebrated more now than they ever have been, I would say. But at the same, and one thing that a lot of people are noticing today that people didn't notice back then was that MLK and the Black Panthers actually had a lot of similarities. And MLK, in a sense, I think had he lived longer, probably would have embraced the Black Panthers and would have worked with them, as they both were against Vietnam, they both were against segregation. They were both vilified by the media, by society, by the FBI. Martin Luther King was listed as the most unpopular man in America at the time of his death. And both the civil rights movement, which Martin Luther King led, and the Black Panther Party were destroyed essentially by the FBI. And despite all of this, though, the black community had a very high approval rating of the Panthers at 90% approximately, while the white community didn't like them at all. And so the Panthers essentially, because of all of this and because of what was mentioned earlier, did a lot for the community and did a very good job trying to support the community and actually helped to lower crime in some states. Unfortunately, though, the government mistrust and paranoia will ultimately destroyed them. And today, the legacy lives on. There are certain Panther offshoots which have been condemned by the original Black Panther Party, but the original Black Panther Party is, considered one of the most influential revolutionary groups that America's ever seen. And I guess for justifiable reasons, as we've just seen this presentation on the Black Panthers. Thank you.